actually study how to have a baby. The body knows. And so therefore, given that, just like every other thing that we leave alone and allow to happen organically, if we left birth alone, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, breastfeeding, I guess we'd figure it out because it would happen anyway. What's the most conducive and supportive of physiological birth is trust. We may have some angst and pain and drama about our puberty, for example, again, but we just trust that somehow it's going to happen and we're going to come out the other end one day. Same with the pregnancy, same with the childbirth, same with the postpartum, the breastfeeding. Trust that we are actually well equipped. We have everything we need. Trust that left alone, the process is going to most likely take its course. Trust that with the extra efforts of understanding better, staying in good health, best health that we can reach and achieve, taking care of all the elements of good health, which is not just physiological, but, emotional and spiritual and nutritional and all of these other areas. Trust that when we provide all of those things that keep us normal, human, leveled out, that the physiological process actually works. So I think it comes down to just believing in the process, trusting our bodies to be able to fulfill on that promise that is life, and to know that all of us have that opportunity to find our way through it, whatever way it shows up, because that's how it is. So very common these days are inductions of labor. What's an induction? Well, that's when you literally start the labor artificially. In other words, childbearing person doesn't feel contractions building up, or doesn't notice the mucus plug or the bloody show, or doesn't have the water break, but nothing is going on that suggests that this person is in labor at this moment, and then something is done to said person to put them into labor where they weren't on their own, organically or naturally in labor. So an induction can happen, and often happens, anywhere toward the due date. Some physicians feel, within 3 weeks of the due date, that's a safe time frame. Recent work and recent research has pointed to at least 39 weeks of a 40-week pregnancy, so the last week of the pregnancy according to the due date. And some folk, will definitely, many providers, physicians, midwives will consider that after 42 weeks of pregnancy, then for sure, let's get this baby born. It's time for an induction. So induction is taking somebody who physiologically is not physically in labor and having them be literally forced into labor by artificial means. Some of those include putting hormonal medications through IV fluid, through the drip, to get into the patient's body and to start the uterus contracting, an actual medication called oxytocin. Then other ways are to put something into the vagina, near to the cervix or into the cervix itself, such as medications like prostaglandins and other types of medications that can start contractions, start the uterus working. There's other methods where there's no medication at all, but rather a mechanical opening of the cervix using like a little inflatable balloon, and inflating the balloon and forcing it into the cervix so that the cervix can begin dilating, opening up, because we have to have the cervix open to get to the pushing phase of labor and get the baby born. So there's other ways, taking a pill by mouth to bring on contractions, or having pills inserted into the body to, again, bring on contractions. So induction has various ways. There are some providers who will actually take a little hook and go into the cervix and break the bag of water. It's called an amni hook, and it breaks the bag, which is like a balloon of water that the baby lives in, and then again hope that that will start labor. So there's these various methods to artificially begin a process that has not yet started on its own, but will start, because again, every pregnancy ends. There's a point where no matter what we do or don't do, the child will come out. So inductions tend to be done prior to the due date, which is an arbitrary date that we work out according to the period, the last period, or according to an ultrasound. And we sort of name this date, and it's like the gospel truth. And this is the date we expect this baby. And with that knowledge of, we'll use that as a marker for the rest of the entire pregnancy. And when an induction is done, it's done usually prior to that due date. But there are inductions done after the due date in terms of, well, now the pregnancy is going on too long, or it's not safe to continue the pregnancy. And then very rarely we induce mothers who are in critical danger, usually life-threatening danger, and that the safest way to save mother's life is to bring the baby early. And those are situations where mothers, for example, have preeclampsia, high blood pressure, hemorrhaging before the baby's out, antepartum hemorrhage, those kinds of very serious and critical conditions, life-saving methods, inducing a baby that may not even be anywhere near term, a 28-week baby because blood pressure is so high, or a 32-week baby because there's a low-lying placenta, these kinds of things. There's a belief and even science research that suggests that an induction might be safer and might have a better outcome in terms of, rather than waiting for labor to ensue and the baby to get older and stay longer in the uterus. There's obviously a lot of controversy around that, but in general, folk are being supported with, oh, this is the time to get this baby born, and they're being appealed to at quite a vulnerable time. Anyone who's had a baby knows by those last few weeks you're wretchedly miserable and ready to be done. And so when someone suggests, hey, don't you want this baby right now? The answer is likely going to be, yes, please, line me up, I'm ready. And so inside of this dilemma, which I think it is a dilemma, because of the amount of inductions that are done, how common induction is in the modern obstetric way, it's a difficult, maybe even a moral one, where you have the suggestion, you'd be better off. We want to help you be better off. We want to help you get to the end of this road. We want to help make sure. And there's a sort of I'm not going to say trickery, but certainly an element of, here's this part of the information and evidence, as opposed to here's the other. So the other side being, actually, the baby will come out anyway. Actually, in the absence of anything wrong with you, any actual, ill health or problem, then you're safer to hold on. And then the other piece, of course, which is that we then begin a cascade of what we call interventions once we start an induction. Because it's not just the starting of the labor, it's also the maintaining of the labor, it's the continuation of the labor. And so you now need continual medication typically to keep it going. You also see a higher incidence of, the induction has failed, didn't actually work, labor did not ensue, and now we're going to a C-section because that's all we can do, because a day, 2 days, 3 days later, here you are, still not delivered. So those pieces of information aren't always shared at the same time as it's a good idea to get this baby right now, and you're at your due date or a week away, so why don't we? As well as, not giving the full picture, if you will. The informed consent is perhaps a little one-sided, lopsided, and in favor of the induction rather than the other way around. So inductions in and of themselves, when necessary, they're justified. It makes good sense. But we do seem to have a propensity of inductions for convenience. For example, there's many studies that have shown babies are born between 9 and 5 Monday to Friday. How weird is that? Like, where did that come from, right? Like, physiologically speaking, babies just know it's 9 to 5. The providers are good and ready. Everybody's on their game. The OR, the theater is open. Let's go. 9 to 5. They don't get born on the weekends. Interesting, right? They don't get born overnight. It's like, well. So these kinds of nuances show up because we are interfering with a natural process. And this is where you have to stop and ask yourself, is this expedient? Is this really safe? And why do we do such things?